I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Now, today we're reading from the book of Isaiah, chapter 63, and let's focus on verses 15 and 16. Look down from heaven and see from your lofty home, holy and beautiful. Where is your zeal and your might? Your yearning and compassion are withheld from me. You are our Father, even though Abraham does not know us and Abraham doesn't recognize us. You, Lord, are our Father from ancient times. Your name is our Redeemer. Now, at the heart of Isaiah's prayer is Israel's need for revival. And we can obviously identify with that in our generation. What is revival? That's a good question. Well, today's chapter brings out some important aspects of revival. First, the Lord makes His presence and His power known suddenly and dramatically. All revivals are marked by a mysterious, irresistible sense that God is near. His power is felt in an awesome way, like the way He had shown Himself at the exodus of Israel from Egypt. Someone who witnessed a revival in the 1800s said this. He said, "It was so evidently the work of God that not a dog dared to move his tongue." Secondly, revival has a sense of holy fear. What does that mean? When God comes down, the nations tremble. It is obvious that it is the Lord and He is in control. That means that pride and arrogance are humbled. Unbelievers are convicted of their sins. Believers are humbled and they worship the majesty of their God. You know, during the Great Awakening in the 18th century in Britain and in New England, entire nations were affected. Leaders were raised up, laws were changed, patterns of lifestyles were altered, places of sin were abandoned. And when God moves, everything is affected by His movement. Now, thirdly, revival is a display of God's righteous rule. This is the impotence of the church at large that necessitates the cry for God's coming. What do I mean by that? When the church is acting powerless, impotent, well, that means that the Lord needs to come in a potent way and rule in a very clear and a righteous way. Revival is the sovereign work of a sovereign God. And by that I mean that unless God comes, and He comes powerfully, there can be no revival. George Whitefield made 13 trips to America in his lifetime, but only on one occasion did revival break out. On the other hand, after a period of unparalleled blessing in his preaching in Scotland, William Charles Burns went to China, and then he labored faithfully for 21 years with little to no fruit. You see, that's why we must pray for revival instead of solely working toward it. So first, God makes His power and His presence known. Then holy fear falls upon the people, which leads to the people having an awareness that only God can bring about such a revival. And fourthly, revival is a display of God's mercy. In Isaiah's prophecy, God has withdrawn from Israel, but only for a season. He was angry and He stood outside the door of the temple, so to speak. I'm not going inside, even though they're in there trying to worship me. The people's hearts were hardened and they had grown insensitive to the demands of the Lord. I don't like living according to the Bible. That's like church today. Things had reached the point where it was hard to distinguish Israel from the other nations. Can the same be said of us, the church today? You see, when we act as the nations, we're rebuked as the nations. And were it not for God's mercy, that is, not giving the fullness of the punishment we deserve, were it not for His mercy, well, we'd be utterly destroyed in His presence. And lastly, revival has this aspect to it. During revival, there is a sudden conversion of sinners in great numbers. Most recently, the Jesus movement of the 1960s and 70s is an excellent example of such a rush of new believers. You had literally thousands of people reading the Bible with us daily. And could it be that the Lord would be leading us to pray as we read His Word daily, because God is sowing into us the seeds of readiness. Readiness for what? To receive a coming revival. It's not just enough for people to turn to the Lord during a revival. Somebody has to discipline them, teach them how to read the Bible. New believers have to be discipled. And that's by you and me. Jesus said this, "Oh man, the harvest is plentiful." I put the "oh man" part in there. The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. And then he said, pray that the Lord would send laborers into the fields. That's you and me. The people who not only when the harvest comes can gather in the harvest, but those people can also disciple the new believers. When we read the Bible day by day, we are sowing the seeds of readiness. The Bible says to be prepared always to give reason for the hope that is within you. I'm Steve Wiggins, and this is the Groundworks Ministries podcast. Now, Groundworks Ministries operates entirely through financial donations from faithful people like you. Literally, by faith, I wake up, read the Bible, write devotionals, record these devotionals, and say, I don't know, Lord, I know you've led me to this, and so, Lord, you will provide for us, not just our needs, but also the ability to expand the scope of our reach. We in faith are seeking the Lord, and in faith, He's investing back into us the Scripture, and we're reinvesting it into people like you. Yes, we do need your monthly support for people to reinvest in what we're putting out so that we could reach even more. You know, donating is secure and it's easy at our website, groundworksministries.com. Another way to help is just tell people about Groundworks Ministries. Share these podcasts with friends and family and on your social media. And of course, you can always direct folks to our website, groundworksministries.com.